interested in learning more, and the fact that there's a bunch of options that made it a reasonable and easy to make decision. Much appreciated.
Oh, you're very welcome. Glad to have you on. I think you'll enjoy the process. The basic idea is we want to take something as non-specific as meditation and drop it into a real practical skill that's transferable into daily life. So you can do it while you're driving, not meditation where you close your eyes and you bliss out, but like really how can you bring this into your life in a way that is just a way to come back into center, to kick the brain out of fight, flight, freeze as rapidly as possible. And there's sort of two ways we can focus on this. One is you can have a very specific trigger. You like to surf, you're afraid of sharks. How do you work with the fear of sharks? Your job requires you speaking in public. You get nervous when you speak in front of people. How do you deal with that as a very specific trigger? Or it can be something that is, I'm just really super busy and I run around with this sort of chronic state of generalized anxiety where I feel like I can't shut down. We can kind of come at it from either side. So it's up to you to kind of get an idea of where you feel like the most impact can be made in your life.
Okay, I am fairly good generally. I mean, I always have a slight anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's got much better as I've sort of tried to make it much better. But I think the thing for me, as it relates to my mindfulness practice and like where I am in my journey right now and improvement, is mostly being triggered by my children, particularly my older one.
Okay. How old?
He's 6.
Okay.
So we had, basically we're just poor parents the first couple of years, didn't know what we were doing, young, moved around, and everything was just a whirlwind. And we related to him in a way that was really poor and negative, and he's suffering from that now. So we're now doing the work ourselves. We're looking into play therapy for him, but it's still one of those things where like he'll just do things, and because I input those things on him originally, I feel they get to me very quickly.
Okay.
So it would be amazing to sort of deal with that before I lash out, or just to give a little bit of time to respond properly. Because no matter how much mindfulness, meditation, all the rest I do, it's like he just cuts right through it.
My best friend has 3 kids, and 2 of the kids he's able to relate to in a better way. One of them just has a little inroad in a particular way that just is more challenging to work with. So I think that's fairly common to have one of the kids just kind of be able to cut through your armor a little more easily.
Yeah. So it'd be nice to have something to come back to in those moments when it's happening.
Okay. That's perfect. The basic idea, right, is that when we're triggered, we are not present. So, you can look at Eckhart Tolle, the whole idea of the present moment, the power of now, that whole sort of thing. And any trigger is what pulls us out of just being here in the moment. So the goal is to develop the neurological wiring so you can get back more rapidly. So when you're triggered, you recover in one breath versus one day, right? And the process of returning is the practice, because that's the wiring that you want to develop. You don't really care about staying in the zone 100% of the time. You care about life is going to happen. There will be things in life that throw you off because you're human. That's just part of the journey. We have emotions. As we are more grounded in ourselves, we tend to be thrown off by less and less things. But even at that, we can have a rich practice of meditation and mindfulness, and still somebody you love passes away, you're going to be triggered. Something bad happens, you're going to be triggered. You get scared. Like this is just, it's part of the human experience. And so my perspective is, because we don't live in a temple, because our goal is not to sit in nirvana 24/7 on the meditation cushion, we live out in the mud of day-to-day life. I care about people having that capacity to come back to center as rapidly as possible. And there are two main ways that we can reconnect with reality in the present moment and get out of our head. And one is the physical body and one is the breath. Because you can't really be stuck in a story of what your son's actions mean or might mean somewhere in the future if you're really focused on feeling your hand. We can't really we can't let the mind run that story and be totally present with our hand. We also can't follow the breath in and out and be running the story as well. In Zen, they call it a first arrow, a second arrow, a third arrow, a fourth arrow. And it's like your son's actions is the first arrow, but all the meaning that you put behind it will be the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. And that's what you get entangled with. Right? And so the guided meditation that you'll receive probably later today is something that focuses on feeling 2 points of awareness. One will be your feet upon the ground, and one will be the breath. And so your practice as you do the meditation will be to keep coming back to literally the physical sensation of those two things. And what ends up happening is as you do that practice regularly, whether you do it for 20 minutes or you do it for one breath, you feel your feet, you feel the breath, and then you move along with your day. Every time you come back to that practice, you begin to hardwire a neurological pathway of finding groundedness in your physical body. And the more that that's developed, the quicker you'll be able to come out of trigger mode and back to, okay, that sucked, but I'm in my frontal brain, not my limbic brain, right? I'm in my higher brain, not my lower brain. And the idea would be that, some triggers are bigger and some triggers are smaller. So, there's certain things that will happen that will trigger you, and it's a level 3. And certain things will trigger you and they'll be a level 8 or a level 9. The tea and the oils, what they end up doing is they take the triggers overall and they begin to shrink them. Because if it's a level 3 trigger, it'll be easier for you to come back to center than if it's a level 9 trigger. And so by drinking the tea every day and putting the oils on and doing that practice, what you'll find is sort of 2 things would be my goal. One is that overall, when you get triggered, you'll find the things that used to be a 9 are suddenly only a 3 because you're just more centered in yourself. It still triggers you. You're still human. If I walk up and punch you in the face, you're going to be angry. Doesn't matter how cultivated you are. You just be like, yo, what the hell? Right? So we're not trying to get rid of being human because that's just not realistic. But you'll find that you can navigate the reactions. They won't pull you as far out of your center. And then 2, when you do get pulled off, you'll come back to center much more rapidly. And so for myself, I've been doing this for a long time and I still get triggered. Things still make me upset, but I can come back pretty well within a few breaths most of the time. I just really dive into the physical sensation of my body. As you go further into the practice, what we'll have you do is start to observe when you react, where does that show up in your body? So you may feel a constriction in your chest, you may feel it in your shoulder, you may get some pain in your neck, and then we'll bring your awareness to that area. But for the beginning, what we'll do is we'll just begin to build this very physical sensation of the body, your feet on the floor, and the breath coming and going from your body. And you put the oil on the points, you drink the tea, and while you're drinking the tea, you can still be feeling your feet on the ground. So it's sort of, again, like a 2-point awareness meditation. You're aware of your feet, you're lost in that physical sensation of your feet upon the ground, and you're tasting the tea and just being present with the physicality of those 2 things, the flavor of the tea, the bitterness of it, the smell of the oils, the sensation of your feet, and the the beginning stages of meditation, we're going to go into like the technicality of it, is concentration. Because you can't really meditate unless you can stay concentrated. And the best way to be able to concentrate is to come back into the physicality of the body. And so the beauty of that ends up being that the only tool you really ever end up needing is just your physical body. Mm-hmm. So no matter where you are, the tea just helps to begin that wiring process. And I still have that tea and I use it every once in a while, but I don't use it very often because I just don't need to anymore. The process has been wired into me. Mm-hmm. Some people will use it as like a once a month sort of ritual, just to make sure you're not letting things build up. So you can think of it, traditionally, the tea would have been used at the new moon and the full moon. And it becomes sort of like twice a month, you just do a deeper check-in with yourself to make sure you're not carrying any emotional charge or any emotional baggage that's building up over time. And that might be like at the end of the month, that might become your ritual. It's like, okay, I'll do this meditation daily, and then twice a month, I'll drink the tea and kind of go a little bit deeper just to make sure I'm coming back to center.
Okay.
And then we can also, if you find there are certain things that are very specific triggers, then we can have you work with that one trigger to try to basically shrink the charge of that trigger. Okay. Any questions with it?
I suppose you've mentioned it, but at the end of this, it would be interesting to get a longer term view of how to integrate this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly integrating it into current existing mindful practices.
Yeah.
I meditate daily and have done for 3 or 4 years now. And it has gone from Headspace, which was, I think, sort of a great way to get into it. I briefly tried TM and EFT tapping. And I have been using the Waking Up app from Sam Harris, and that just hit me on so many levels.
Okay.
That it's really been able to get me into my body, like you're talking about, and just be and look for who's looking. And it's like, wow, there's like not this separate ego in there. There's just what's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, figuring out how to integrate it with something like that.
Okay.
I'm super interested in the new meditation. I'm interested to see how this works. But yeah, I'm just interested to moving forward because I really do enjoy the Waking Up app. Mm-hmm. And so I'm totally open to this working even better, of course. So yeah, just sort of integration in the long run would be a goal.
What I think you'll find that, the Taoists basically, like, if we look back at history and we look at the evolution of meditation techniques and mindfulness techniques and awarenesses, everybody comes to a temple to try to escape some degree of suffering, right? Most people, they're drawn to monastic life because the outside world sucks. And so we go on retreat somewhere to try to work through our stuff. That's the historical model, right? Unless I was a really poor family and I get sold to the temple or donated to the temple or whatever. And so there's certain stages that we all go through in that unraveling process to come back into center, to be a little bit more emotionally aligned and a little bit more spiritually aligned. And because of the framework of Chinese medicine within Chinese culture, the Taoists and the Buddhists both used herbal teas as a way to sort of basically microdose or to hack the process to make it easier. Because we all come in and whatever your trigger is, whatever my trigger is, those things may be different, but the emotional charge that comes out of it is the same, mm-hmm. right? So Natalie's triggers may be different than yours, but once I'm triggered, we're kind of all in the same space. And so they came up with these herbal teas as ways to help shift the brain waves back into alignment a little bit more easily. And the beauty of it is that it's a learnable thing. The more we practice it, the more it becomes our normal operating system versus the other. And that's really where, in my experience, the Taoist approach really sort of expedites the process or expedites the journey, because we're able to get into that zone a little bit more rapidly to build those neurological pathways. So I think you'll find, if you've done meditation before, you'll find that those the inclusion of the tea and the oils will really help you drop into that zone that much more. So if you do the meditations from waking up, or you do them from something else that you've done before, or you do the one that I send you, you'll find that you get more out of it. And since you have a background with it, I would totally encourage you, besides for doing this, the one that I send you every day, experiment with some of the other ones and see how your relationship with them changes by incorporating the tea. Because you already have data for how those meditations work for you. And by adding in a new variable, you can sort of compare and contrast the difference, where the meditation that I send may be new to you, so you may not have as much compare and contrast. One of the points that I make with meditation, for myself and for all of my clients, is at the beginning of each meditation, take a pause and in your inner voice, give yourself permission to shut everything else out. Be like, this is my time, and really own the ownership of that time being yours. And in a sense, almost thank yourself for taking the time for yourself, because meditation is a little bit of work, and it requires, with our daily life, finding time to squeeze that stuff in. And it's nice to sort of build in the positive feedback loop of, no, this is time for me. I'm taking this time, and now I'm going to do the meditation. And it will often allow you to keep your mind a little bit more stable throughout it, because you've given yourself permission to put everything else on hold rather than just trying to jump into it. You'll be worrying about, oh, well, what about this or what about that? With your previous experiences, has there been anything that you get stuck with that you find particularly challenging
while meditating? Not particularly. I mean, growing up with Headspace, as it were, that was very sort of just got me into it, and there would be a lot of sort of mind chatter that went along with that, and it was very good for the exercise in the sense that, I mean, I like the sort of doing a bicep curl. You know, every time you lift the weight, it's one more rep, and so every time I came back to the, just noticing it was one more rep, but there's a lot of reps with that. And so, yeah, recently I'm feeling really, really good. I used to do 10 minutes a day, and I just found that wasn't quite enough, so I've increased it to 20 lately.
Perfect.
But yeah, in regards to challenges, it's hard to say. I mean, he switches it up so much, whether it's noticing a visual field or the breath or sensations in the body or sounds. So I feel like I'm fairly well focused, I suppose, and can draw it back. I mean, some days are harder than others, of course.
Of course.
But yeah, this is like, honestly, this is basically my full-time gig right now. For the last couple of years, I've been so into just like not feeling so horrible. And now I've finally got to the place where I don't feel so horrible, but I don't know what's after that. I don't know what it feels like to feel good. It doesn't feel horrible anymore. So like, I'm really happy with that. But I'm finally, I think, at the stage of getting through the baggage and grieving properly for things that I had, that will not come, that I wish there was from childhood and all the rest of it, that I'm ready to sort of take the step into the unknown. Which is one of the reasons that I'm interested in this. I'm interested in sort of plant medicine, and I've done breath work. I just did a 3-day fast. I'm just like really willing to dive in and do the work. So yeah, I'm super excited to have a guide along with it, actually.
So in the sort of general meditation journey, are you familiar with Taoism or Chinese medicine, or?
Not a lot, actually. I'm sort of throwing my trust in here.
So the Chinese break the body. They like trinities. So you have what are known as like different energy centers. So instead of the chakra system, they have the dantians, the elixir fields. You have a lower one that's in the abdomen. You have a middle one, which is in the chest, and you have the upper one, which is in the head. And they sort of mimic the cavities of the body. So we have the cranial cavity, the thoracic cavity, and the abdominal cavity. And they represent a sort of journey of us going from the base, pure physical survival, digestion, reproduction, into the heart-centered emotional connection and then into something bigger than ourselves, into the realm of spirit. And we kind of have to be able to eat, sleep, live, survive before we can really try to relate with somebody emotionally. If I'm worried about starving, I don't really care about your feelings so much because I'm worried about starving, right? Hard for me to relate to something more divine if I'm in my emotional triggers, right? Hard to connect to a bigger picture of God, Tao, Buddha, Allah, whatever we want to call it, if I'm just angry all the time, if I'm scared all the time. And so the Chinese model is, okay, build a solid foundation in physicality so that we can work with the emotions that are there and whatever's causing it. Look at our past, look at our sociological programming, how we were raised, look at our cultural perspective, look at any trauma that's there, and try to clear all that stuff out. So then we can connect into God, divinity, universal love, whatever we want to label that as. And there are meditations designed to work with that facet of sort of what I would call grace or divinity. So we're just trying to connect into the feeling of love. So you look at your child when they're born, or you look at your wife after she just gave birth, and that just deep sense of, oh my God, I love these people, of just like intense, overwhelming beauty of love. And how do we bring that into our meditative practice? And there are specific ways within the Taoist paradigm to help build that space. So likely at the end of this, that'll be something that we want you to do, basically, because that sounds like what you're looking for.
That's exactly right. Actually, one of the things that I'm looking into with all of these mindfulness practices with an intention is how to access that love, any love.
Yes.
It's as though there's, like, I'm so familiar with all the negative emotions, and I think it just cut me through such that even with wife and children, getting to that place of love, unconditional love, is very difficult. That's for me the thing that I would like most for myself the next couple of years, is just figure out how to access that.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely work with that. That's most of my practice day to day is in that space. Okay. And I'm human, and so I work at this space as well because I get triggered, right? I'm in the mud with the rest of us. And within different religions, there are sort of liturgical studies of textbooks, studies of ritual, study of formality, and there's always also a mystical branch. Buddhism has its version of mysticism, Taoism has its versions, Islam has Sufism, there's all these, right? Kabbalah within Judaism, you have the Christian mystics of the Desert Fathers. And the branch of Taoism that I study is a mystical branch. It's not a study this text or study that text. And a lot of the practices are based on visualization. And so what will migrate you towards is some visualization practices, which I have some guided meditations, and we'll play with that. I think if you can find that you're able to keep yourself relatively calm, not untriggered, just most of the time you're in a pretty good space, then what will happen is that will become your baseline. And then this 2-point awareness will be your grounding. And I use the meditation that I'm going to send you, I use this at the beginning of every meditation. I might do it for 1 breath or 3 breaths, but it just brings me back into center. So then I can do my other practices. And that would be my goal, is that if you can find, okay, I get triggered, I come back, I can get myself back into just a good space pretty easily, then it makes it much easier to do, not more advanced, but more advanced in the sense that you have to be grounded to do them.
Yes.
Sort of practices. And then there's lots of different herbs you can use to open up that part of the brain, much like the use of microdosing with psilocybin or anything like that. You can use, like the 3 Shanti, you can use things to help get your brain into that space more easily, which is great.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this, actually. I'm glad to hear that that's sort of your next step. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, that's it's kind of where it all has to go. Because I mean, really the whole point of any of all of this stuff is to move us more towards love and happiness and light. And if it's not taking us in that direction, then it's probably not where we want to go in the big scheme of things. Right.
Yeah.
But it does, one of the nice things, that one of the things that I relate to so much about this side of it from Chinese medicine and Taoism, that is very much grounded in this reality. It's not just that sort of happy-go-lucky, hippie love, light, ignore everything else that's there. It's like, no, how can we have a really shitty day and still be connected to love and light? How can we not ignore reality? How can we bring that love and light into the most difficult of situations? Because if you step back and you look at your goals, they're probably not that you just want to be in that space all the time. Probably your goals are more that you want to be in that space and you want to bring it to the people around you in your life. So you want to be a light to them. It's not that you just want to be blissed out and not connected to everybody.
Yes.
If that's what we wanted, we'd go be in a temple.
Exactly.
But we want to have a family. You want to be in the world and be a light for your friends, for your family. And for me, that's definitely the goal. So
cool.
And your other half?
Yes. Is it okay to carry on in this recording, or sorry, I guess this phone call, so that she doesn't have to log out and do all that stuff?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'll just let it run through, and then we can, on the editing side, we can cut through some stuff. I will send you an email later. You'll get some automated emails that will have all the information for how to use the oils and the herbs. The herbs are easy. Use them in like 8 to 12 ounces of water when you make your cup of tea. If you make it too concentrated, it'll be very bitter. So more water is better. And then the oil, you have an area about the size of a 5-cent piece or a quarter. You don't have to be as precise as I would be with an acupuncture needle. If you have any questions with it, just shoot me an email and we can go over
the application of the oil and the consumption of the tea will be explained in an email, I presume, and then everything in relation to timing, is that all explained? Yeah, it should all be in there. And if there's anything that's missing, please let me know and I'll make sure that I correct that. But it should all be there. You'll have pictures of where the points are that will explain what to do. It'll explain the process of the tea. You'll have an MP3 for the guided meditation, so you can stick it on your phone and listen to it. And it's really, if you've done meditation, it's really simple, so you'll get the idea pretty quickly. Like all meditation stuff, if you can isolate for 10 to 20 minutes and do it, absolutely fabulous. But the nature of the meditation is you could do it right now for one breath. And if you can do that 20 times a day, that's also going to expedite the neurological wiring. Right. So the more you can just kind of do it randomly through the day of like, take a pause, feel the 2 points, move along, you'll get more out of it. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. I'm excited. I will keep my eye out for that email. Okay. And if everything is good now, then yeah, I will pass you over to my wife. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for taking the time. Yeah. I look forward to working with you.